Hello, this is Gemini, your friendly neighborhood spy. Welcome back to my channel and the first episode of my new series, Vicious and Vile, analyzing the villains of Fire Emblem. While Fire Emblem boasts a long list of dastardly enemies who oppose our favorite heroes, often with terrifying effectiveness, one stood out as the perfect place to start, Dayan's jet-clad general, the Black Knight. Not to be mistaken for this Black Knight. Or this one. No, this Black Knight. In this video, I'll take a look at his role as he appears in the story of Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, and discuss what makes him such a memorable villain, because I do consider him to be one of the most effective examples of villain writing the series has ever produced. I won't be holding back on spoilers, so this is your warning if you want to get out now. Otherwise, let's begin. The conflict of Path of Radiance first takes off when our protagonist Ike and his father's company of mercenaries encounter a young woman in distress, pursued by foreign knights. The Grail mercenaries soon discover that this woman is none other than the princess of their own country, Crimea. After some discussion, the mercenaries agree to work for Alencia and escort her to one of Crimea's foreign allies to petition for aid. Now, throughout these early chapters, the player gets a chance to deploy each member of the Grail mercenaries and see how each of them plays, with one exception. The player is never given control over the mercenary crew's own leader, Grail himself. While the Grail mercenaries is home to many competent warriors, Grail is on his own level. Not only is he respected by a troop of highly trained fighters, but in the rare glimpses we get to see of him fighting, he cleaves through enemy soldiers like it's barely an inconvenience. This matters because it serves as setup. We know that Grail is a badass. He's so strong that the game won't let us take control of him. He would trivialize any combat we brought him into. Which is everything we need to know as today's subject enters the spotlight. During the night, Ike spots Grail sneaking off by himself. Curious, he follows. When he catches up with his father, Grail seems different. Ever since their fight earlier, in which they briefly saw a knight clad all in black armor, he's been acting weird, ponderous. They chat briefly. Grail asks Ike how he feels about his new responsibilities in the mercenary company. He also asks Ike what he remembers about his mother, who died long ago. There's a sort of finality about the conversation. In the end, Grail tells Ike to go back to the castle. Ike, however, doesn't listen. He trails after his father and there witnesses a scene that will alter the course of his life forever. Deep within the forest, lit only by the light of the moon and the stars above, Grail is engaged in a desperate fight against a knight clad entirely in black armor. Although Grail unleashes a powerful string of attacks with his axe, the knight pushes him back with barely any effort. He chastises Grail for being weak, throws him a sword out of pity and tells him to use that instead, so that he might see him at his full strength. Stubborn, Grail refuses the weapon and launches one final strike with his mighty axe, only to be gutted on the Black Knight's blade. As he lays dying, several important pieces of information are relayed. First, the Black Knight refers to Grail as his teacher. Next, the knight demands that Grail tell him where it is. We don't know what they're talking about, but Grail insists that he threw it away. However, the knight doesn't believe him and threatens to kill Ike and torture Mist if he won't tell him where it is. But before the knight can make good on his threats, the Lion King of Gallia makes his presence known with a deafening roar, and the knight retreats into the woods. After a last few words with Ike, warning him to stay away from that knight, to take care of Mist, the legendary commander of the Grail mercenaries dies in his son's arms. Heartbroken and left with so many questions, Ike and Mist bury their father with his prized axe. The reason I spent so much time summarizing the Black Knight's appearance in the game is because it goes so hard in establishing what makes him such an effective and terrifying villain. The game sets Grail up as an unstoppable badass, stronger than even the veteran fighters of the mercenary company like Titania and Shinin. And yet, the Black Knight makes quick work of him. Right away, we know that Ike doesn't stand a chance against this armored demon. It sets Ike up for a revenge quest to kill his father's murderer, and foreshadows what we learn later about the Fire Emblem, Laren's medallion. But it's so much more than that. Learning that the knight was formerly Grail's student draws a connection between him and Ike. Ike was also Grail's student, although he was too young to have fully mastered his father's lessons. The conflict between Ike and the Black Knight isn't only about revenge. It's also a rivalry between two students, about inheritance. It's a contest to see who will take Grail's teachings the farthest, about what sort of legacy he'll leave behind in the world. After all, Grail didn't only teach the knight how to fight. According to his own words, the knight's willful arrogance was his own doing as well. Ike is Grail's chance to leave behind a different kind of legacy, one of humility and decency, traits that we see from Ike throughout both games in the duology. It's not enough that the Black Knight is a threat. He's tied inextricably to our protagonist's character arc, and we're just getting started. The game developers were very clever with how they used the Black Knight in both games. After watching him kill Grail, those of us holding the controller know that Ike and his loose company of mercenaries don't stand a chance against him. His incredible strength has already been established. So then, just a few chapters later, they did the unthinkable. Placed the Black Knight on the battlefield. As Ike and company are scrambling to get past Daean soldiers and vigilantes to escape on a ship, the Black Knight emerges onto the field, surveys the battle around him, and grumbles about the general incompetence of his cronies. Then joins the fight himself. If you're like me, you probably moved one of your soldiers close enough to attack him, selected the attack option, just to see what would happen. And one look at the battle preview was enough humility for a lifetime. Your best warrior couldn't give him a paper cut, let alone a scratch. All the other enemies you faced so far could be fought, brought down. But this? Your only option, you realized, was to run. Keep all your units as far away as possible, and hope you could reach the ship before the Black Knight reached anyone you cared about. It's like the developers placed an elite button on the map and gave it legs. It's such an effective moment from both a narrative and gameplay perspective. The Black Knight's presence on the battlefield tells you that the training wheels are coming off, and that this game's threats have teeth. It challenges you to play more aggressively, to take risks, because otherwise certain death is at your heels. The gameplay reinforces the narrative, letting you see for yourself how helpless the fight really is. But it also ignites a spark. As gamers, we expect that every enemy we face can be defeated. So now that we found one we can't, we're driven to find a way. It's a long-term goal, and a vision of what to expect. Someday, if we trust in the story we're being told, we will be strong enough to face the Black Knight for ourselves. It's really amazing how every scene this guy's in just carries so much narrative weight. Like, dang, intelligent systems. Nice. Anyway, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here. The story continues, the Grail mercenaries grow in strength and numbers, new enemies are conquered. But vengeance stays rooted in Ike's mind. In Chapter 24, Battle Reunion, he gets another chance to challenge his nemesis. The Black Knight makes an appearance, but Ike doesn't confront him immediately. He has duties to fulfill after all. Afterwards, however, he finds the knight and challenges him to a duel. But despite all he's done and all the experience he's gained, Ike finds that he still can't so much as scratch the paint off the Black Knight's armor. Rather than finishing Ike off, the Black Knight reveals some very important information to him. His armor, it turns out, was blessed by the power of a goddess, and only a similarly blessed weapon can damage him. Where is Ike to get such a weapon? The sword that the Black Knight threw to Grail on that somber night when the commander met his end. Ragnall. A divine weapon, the counterpart to the knight's own sword, Alondite. After relaying this information, the Black Knight turns to leave. Fighting Ike with an insufficient weapon, he says, is boring. They'll fight again when Ike comes prepared. It's a small detail, but this conversation shows Ike's growth. Where the Black Knight viewed him as only a child before, he now recognizes that Ike could be a worthy opponent, with the right equipment. He sees Ike's potential now and wants to face him at his best. Just a few chapters later, Ike, and the player, finally get their chance in one of Fire Emblem's most memorable confrontations. Upon the completion of Chapter 27, the player is given the option to follow the Black Knight into Nato's castle and challenge him. Even after everything we've done, all that we've overcome, even after we've acquired the right weapon to fight him, the game still asks us, are you sure about this? Ike is sure. He's waited long enough, and the moment has finally arrived to bring all he's learned to bear against his father's killer. And unlike every other fight, Ike doesn't have his companions at his back. After all, this duel isn't about Crimea versus Daean or Laguz versus Beork. This fight's personal. Alone, Ike confronts the Black Knight. Little is said. Ike tells the knight that he trusts his father's lessons. Grail may have lost, but he had handicapped himself. Ike has no such impediments. I know I said that Ike goes into the duel alone, and he very much intended to fight the Black Knight that way. But a detail which I love is that Mist is the only other character that can be brought into the battle. She's Grail's child too, after all, and even though she doesn't carry a blessed weapon that can pierce the knight's armor, She insists on taking her place at her brother's side, though in her case, she cares more about protecting her brother than vengeance. What follows is one of, if not the most difficult fight in the game. With only Mist for backup, Ike fights the Black Knight one-on-one. At any time, the Black Knight's powerful Luna skill can activate and send Ike to an early grave, forcing players to replay the whole chapter before another chance. Gamers experience this battle with their teeth clenched, praying to Ashira for an ether activation that will see them through. But hard as the fight can be, it is winnable, and when the dust settles and the light of day shines through what remains of the crumbling castle where they fought, Ike has won. No trace of the Black Knight can be found. Presumably, he is buried beneath the rubble. Thus concludes the looming threat of the Black Knight in Path of Radiance. With his need for vengeance sated, Ike fulfills his role as the head of the Crimean army, and alongside the deposed Princess Silencia, defeats King Ashnard and claims his hard-fought victory, buying liberty and a future for the Kingdom of Crimea. Of course, all Tellius heads know the story doesn't end there. And with the arrival of the second Tellius game, the developers once again pulled off a play of unparalleled panache. Not only is the Black Knight revealed to still be alive, not only did he survive the epic confrontation you worked so hard for, risked so much to achieve in the prior game. No, it's not just that. He's playable. The unstoppable juggernaut that you spent the whole last game desperately trying to beat shows up on your own team, throwing his weight around and cutting through your enemies like a knife through mostly melted butter. Wow, what a boss of a move. Honestly, stuff like that is one of the things that feels lacking in modern Fire Emblem games. But that's a topic for another day. Getting back to Radiant Dawn. And really, of course the Black Knight is still around. There were way too many unanswered questions surrounding him. His body was never found in the rubble, for one thing. But also, we never learned who he really was. Even Ashnard didn't know who was walking around beneath that ebony tin can. Radiant Dawn, for anyone who doesn't already know, kicks off following a spellcaster in Dayan named Micaiah. She leads a ragtag group of rebels called the Dawn Brigade that are resisting Begnion's oppression of the citizens of Dayan following their loss in the war. The Black Knight appears to Micaiah during battle and protects her. He was, after all, one of Dayan's greatest generals. Having fought alongside Ike in the previous war, Micaiah's ally Soth objects to his presence, but Micaiah accepts his help. Although he only remains playable for a few short chapters, it's one hell of a way to start off the sequel. Essentially, it tells us that our starting place in Radiant Dawn is equal to the culmination of our efforts in the previous game. And if that's where we're starting, we can only imagine how much farther we'll go before the story arrives at its finale. As the scope of Radiant Dawn's narrative focuses on other characters, the Black Knight falls through our fingers and is never playable again. However, his role in the narrative is far from finished. One thing I love about a great villain is how they deepen the characterization of other characters too. Not only have we watched Ike's character grow in part because of his drive to defeat him, but the Black Knight's presence helps develop other characters as well. One such example appears through the big reveal of the Knight's identity. Rather than Ike, or Soren, or Mist, the unmasking of the Black Knight comes from Cat Lagoo's and Tellius' best character, Ronulf. All the way back in Path of Radiance, Ronulf confronted the Black Knight and was thoroughly smacked around, only barely escaping with his life. In Radiant Dawn, Ronulf fights yet another unstoppable foe, Begnion's General Zelgis. After exchanging blows with Zelgis, Ronulf is the first character to put it together, recognizing the Black Knight's fighting style and scent, and finding in Zelgis a match. Thus he puts it together that the two are one and the same. Ronulf's discovery is not only a great callback to their fight from Path of Radiance, but it also highlights Ronulf's observational skills and intelligence. Although he doesn't tell Ike his discovery immediately, hoping to find more definitive evidence before making such a proclamation, he does make sure to tell him before they're split up. He knows how important it is for Ike to understand who he's facing. So now that we know the Black Knight's true identity, we can finally fill in the pieces of this mysterious individual. It's really amazing, isn't it, when you think about it? How busy this guy is, running around as a general for two warring nations all throughout Path of Radiance, maintaining the noble facade of General Zelgis when serving Begnion, and slipping into his persona as the brutal black-clad Knight of Dayan when necessary. Trusted and serving directly under the rulers of two of Tellius' most powerful nations. Must get exhausting, huh? I'm not sure how he does it, though the warp powder probably helps. Radiant Dawn sees the continuance of his double life, though he spends most of his time as Zelgis, evading suspicion entirely, except from the ever-perceptive Ronulf. So where do Zelgis' real loyalties lie? As a Branded, a descendant of a Beork and a Laguz, Zelgis has lived a solitary life, untrusting of others due to the persecution he's endured from even his own family. Although he's made a place for himself in the military, he knows that his longer lifespan will eventually expose him, and he'll have to start again. At the end of the day, his only real loyalty lies with Sephiran, who gave him a place and a purpose, a sense of kinship. Sephiran, who may get a video of his own one day, ordered Zelgus to take up the role of the Black Knight, enter the service of King Ashnard, and help Sephiran embroil the continent of Tellius in a war to unseal the dark god locked away within the Fire Emblem. And as Sephiran commands, Zelgus obeys. The games the monarchs play is of no consequence to Zelgus, to the Black Knight. Aside from his loyalty to Sephiran, there's only one motive that runs through his actions from beginning to end: to be the strongest swordsman Tellius has ever known. Studying under Grail, he gained a borderline obsession to be the greatest. He pushed himself to the limits of his abilities. His greatest disappointment came on the day when he finally tracked down and confronted the mentor he idolized. After all that, Grail was so weak, so easily dispatched. Zelgus was victorious, but the fight left him deeply unsatisfied. The truth is that he was overjoyed when he learned from Ike that Grail had handicapped himself. It meant that he hadn't been chasing shadows all those years. Grail really had been as mighty as he remembered, but he'd thrown his greatness away. Grail may be gone, but now his son stands in his place, a shadow of his father. Zelgus sees Ike's promise, and realizes that he can still achieve the satisfaction of fighting his mentor. He has only to let Ike grow into the warrior he's meant to be. His deep-seated desire to defeat Grail transfers to Ike. When he defeats this bold, blue-haired warrior, he can finally stand above all others as Tellius' greatest swordsman. With that one wish, he fights Ike one final time, a true test to measure how far they've come, of which is the ultimate inheritor of Grail's legacy. Finally, after a lonely life in search of meaning, Zelgus is felled by Ike's blade. In Zelgus' final moments, Ike tells him about the important role he's played in pushing him to master his own swordsmanship. The Black Knight was both his father's killer and his final teacher. Satisfied at last for having faced the shadow of the mentor he idolized, Zelgus dies and is finally at peace. Thus ends the relentless brutality of the Black Knight. Having laid to rest his greatest nemesis, Ike has reached, or even surpassed, the heights that his father retained before him. Although his personal enemy is dead, there is work yet to be done, so he takes with him the sword Alondite and carries onward into the final battle. But that's a story for another day. The terrifying and mysterious threat of the Black Knight haunts both Tellius games. The danger he brings to the narrative and the gameplay alike is established early on, and his looming presence motivates both Ike and the player to develop the strength and skills they'll need to defeat him. While he plays a significant role in the game's overarching story, he also serves as the nemesis archetype of villains, a character who isn't just fighting the other side or championing an ideal that clashes with the heroes. No, Ike doesn't just oppose the Black Knight, it's personal. They're more than enemies, neither one of them could ever be satisfied while the other still lived. You might even call them murder soulmates. Ike's encounter with the Black Knight across both games tracked his growth, and defeating him at last brought closure to his character arc. If that wasn't enough already, the Black Knight's presence in the game and the way other characters react to him deepens the world of Tellius and the rest of the cast. So while Tellius is full of great villains, the Black Knight truly stands above the rest, both as a swordsman and as one of the greatest villains in Fire Emblem's history. And as the Black Knight story comes to an end, so too does this video. Not gonna lie folks, this one was a long time in the making, so I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like the video. You know, if you want to. And if you want to see more videos analyzing the villains from Fire Emblem, then comment down below and let me know who you'd like to see. Either way, thanks so much for watching, have an awesome day, and Gemini out.